It was the Great Depression of the 1920s, the year 1920. In the morning, you were wealthy. By evening, you were broke. No war, no warning. Just a catastrophic collapse, wiping out $200 billion, plunging America into a decade of hunger and dust. So what on earth happened? Let's rewind the party before it all fell apart. Imagine this. You wake up in 1922. The war is over. Mustaches are ridiculous, and the economy is booming. Factories are no longer producing tanks. Now they make toasters, vacuum cleaners, and refrigerators, turning the icebox into a symbol of poverty. The New York skyline soars as if infused with new energy. Musicians became the Wi-Fi of the 20s. Heard everywhere. Everyone listened. But no one really understood how it worked. So the economy boomed. People believed this golden era would last forever. Even economists said, trust me, the decade will truly shine. The engines of growth were roaring. Ford Model T cars rolled off assembly lines faster than ever. Thanks to Henry Ford's conveyor belt innovation, what used to take 12 hours now took only 90 minutes. Cars flooded the streets. Factories, automakers worked to exhaustion to meet oil demand. Steel, rubber, every related industry got swept up in the frenzy. So America's economy wasn't just growing. It was accelerating like a race car. As cities lit up with electric lights and luxury, Americans became obsessed with gadgets like radios. By 1920, 10 million households owned a radio. 10 million homes tuned in together to Anderson, and dozens of other ads on AM radio, crackling but enchanting. Yet while the cities partied, rural America hadn't even hit the dance floor. Farmers who had once been wealthy from wartime demand now faced disastrous crop prices. They borrowed money to modernize, but their shiny new tractors didn't save them. Meanwhile, city dwellers discovered a new buying things they couldn't actually afford. Welcome to the era of buy now, pay later. Want a radio? Pay in installments. Want a car? Pay in installments. Even shares of a dog hat company were available on credit. Banks were thrilled with this trend, ready to offer installment plans to anyone. And the thrill? It was like a marriage proposal after 2 dates. Sure, I'll marry you. But the real heart of the frenzy lay on one street. The stock market was like Disneyland. For adults, margin loans allowed anyone to buy 100 of stock with just $10 down. The remaining $90? Who cares? It's the future. Stocks can only go up, right? Even the barber would say, trust me. Electric companies are hot right now. I made a fortune in stocks. Yes, he was still a barber, but mentally, he felt like a financial mogul. You knew things were skewed when barbers, butchers, and even your dog were giving investment advice. Shoe shiners sold golden opportunities to bankers. A bellhop even told tycoon Vanderbilt to sell all railroad stocks and invest in pencils instead. From 1904 to 1920, the Dow Jones quadrupled. Stock prices defied all fundamental analysis. Who cares about profits? When the charts are going up, each surge made people feel more confident than companies ever. Were inventive too. They created holding companies that owned other holding companies, all owning nothing. Just empty layers inflated by stocks. Some tried to warn. Economist Roger Babson said in 1929 a crash was coming. Wall Street responded by buying more stocks and told Roger to get out and take a breath of fresh air. The music drowned him out. Dollar bills rained down like confetti. No one heard him, lost in the sound of money and cheer, while the champagne still fizzed and the music pounded. Cracks quietly began to appear. Rural debt soared, consumer debt ballooned, and the economy partied on the edge of a cliff while no one checked if the floor could hold. 1929. What could possibly go wrong? October 29th, 1920. America woke up rich and went to bed poor. That day entered history as Black Tuesday. The day the stock market didn't just collapse. It dove headfirst into concrete like a perfect 10-meter bridge jump. The Dow plummeted uncontrollably. Ticker machines spat out red numbers. Phones rang incessantly. Men in suits shouted, traders collapsed. Some suffering heart attacks, only to revive, stare at their portfolios again. $14 billion vanished. Adjusted completely. For inflation, that's over $200 billion. Not play money, but houses. College savings. Hopes and dreams of real people. Everything gone. Someone said, sell everything except your Patagonia vest. That's all I have left. Outside the exchange, crowds gathered in stunned silence. Some held hands, some cried, some just stared at the ground, trying to comprehend how an entire economy could trip over its own shoelaces. The Roaring '20s didn't just end. They crashed into a brick wall, taking everyone's retirement plans with them. And that was just the beginning. The crash set off a chain reaction. First came the margin calls. During the boom, people bought stocks with borrowed money, $10 down, to buy 100 shares. Fine, until the market collapsed. Then your broker demanded the remaining $90 back. Investors panicked instantly. Many had nothing to pay. Paper fortunes vanished overnight. Some sons-in-law went bankrupt in days. Bankers who sipped martinis leisurely all now sat staring at their balance sheets. It looked as if it were written in Greek. Then it was the bank's turn. Those grand marble-floored buildings and oak desks turned out to be built on worthless paper and blind faith. When the stock market collapsed, banks couldn't collect debts. So they did the obvious. They collapsed too. And people ran. Not briskly, they ran for real. Mass withdrawals erupted everywhere like wildfire. Crowds pressed against bank branches, banging doors, shouting for their money back. Inside, tellers tried to calm people. Please, stay calm. Your money is safe. But of course it wasn't. Entire families lost everything. Grandfather's bonds became worthless paper. Aunt Margaret's savings evaporated. Only little Timmy's piggy bank was full, simply because no one had the heart to tell him he was now the richest in the house. The disaster didn't stop at America's borders. American banks panicked, calling back all foreign European economies, already patched up after World War, thrown into the grinder. Germany collapsed during its fragile recovery. Britain wobbled. Global trade, once the lifeblood of prosperity, halved in just 3 years. Yet amid the chaos, some denied reality. Newspapers ran optimistic headlines advising investors to take profits. Below, a photo showed a man with a wedding ring, pawning it to buy basic bread. Mrs. Gia insisted the worst was over. Bankers in silk vests smiled awkwardly at the microphones, broadcasting the official version that everything was fine. Burning. President Herbert Hoover appeared on the radio, calm as ever, reassuring Americans that the economy remained strong. In essence, meanwhile, millions sat at empty dinner tables, wondering which words could actually get them through dinner. Yet the system did not stop. Banks staggered forward, collapsing blindly, pretending to be stable. The crash was not the bottom, it was just the beginning. And below, things were far darker. By 1931, the music had stopped, the lights went out, and the party was over. Next came not silence, but the sound of metal screeching as factories stopped. It was the sound of fathers whispering apologies they never thought they'd have to say. It was America breathing, taking one deep breath, only to realize there was nothing left to inhale. Unemployment soared to 25%. 1 in 4 people seeking work couldn't find it. Jobs vanished like smoke. Detroit, once the industrial jewel of the nation, watched its auto factories slowly shut down. Production fell 75%. The great machines stopped turning. Lights dimmed in the assembly halls. Those who once built the American dream stood outside factory gates, not knowing what they were waiting for, or if there was anything left to wait for. Cities buckled under the weight of poverty. Long, endless lines quietly queued for bread. Mothers rose at dawn just to trade for a bowl of thin soup. Children watched, too young to understand why breakfast was now a luxury. Teachers reported students fainting in class, not from boredom, but hunger. They hadn't eaten for days. America was no longer hungry, metaphorically. It was despair starving. Seeped into every room. Banks collapsed. Savings disappeared. Human dignity faded. Suicide rates skyrocketed. The press stopped printing obituaries, unable to keep up with the dead. Behind every statistic was a name. Behind every name was a person who once believed would protect them. Marriage rates plummeted. Birth rates fell. The future became something people no longer dared mention. Who could think of marrying or having children when there might not even be dinner? And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, the sky turned black over the Great Plains. Years of over-farming had stripped away the topsoil. When the rain stopped, the land cracked, then the wind came. Massive dust storms rolled across the heart of America, violent and suffocating. They were called black blizzards, biblical black storms. They didn't just cover the land, they swallowed the sun. Crops were buried, livestock died, houses filled with dust. Families coughed through the night and awoke with their bodies covered in a layer of dirt. Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, millions were forced to leave their homes. They loaded everything left onto old cars, driving westward, chasing rumors of work and land, not yet turned to desert. Signs reading California, Auburn, California, or Subaru. But for many, it was just real collapse. In Washington, President Hoover tried to keep the center from falling apart. He called for volunteer spirit and initiated modest relief programs. He even built the Hoover Dam, a technical marvel, but it couldn't feed the hungry in Chicago or shelter families wandering in St. Louis. He refused large-scale federal aid, calling it dangerous and against American spirit. By then, people stopped listening. His name became a symbol of suffering. Hoovervilles, shantytowns made of scrap metal and cardboard. Hoover blankets, newspapers used as bedding, Hoover flags, pockets turned inside out. His legacy wasn't just concrete and great works, but cold, hunger, and choking dust. Then something began to crack within America. Summer of 1932, thousands of desperate, forgotten World War I veterans marched to Washington. They had been promised a bonus for their service, but decades later, they needed the money now. They camped in tents outside the Capitol, waiting silently. Congress said no, Hoover said no, and the army was sent in. I fought for this country. I did too. Tear gas was fired at the camps, burning them down. Families fled through the smoke. The government aimed weapons at the very people who protected it. For the first time, Americans witnessed in utter horror not only the shock of what was happening, but the realization of who they had become. Extremist ideologies spread. Socialist demonstrations erupted everywhere. People turned to communism, not because they believed in the doctrine, but because capitalism had abandoned them. Fueled only by hunger, crime rose across the nation. Bank robbers like Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde were no longer seen as criminals, but folk heroes. Those who dared to strike back at the organizations that had betrayed all. America was not only exhausted but shattered. Yet even then, something held on. Not faith, not optimism, but endurance. People did not give up. They migrated, they queued, holding hands. They survived not because things would get better, but because they had no other choice. But the question remained, in a country that once promised endless growth, what would be left when growth stopped, and who, if anyone, could lead them out of the ruins? March 1930. Franklin Delano Roosevelt stood at the podium for his inauguration. Millions listened as he spoke. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Not gold, not banks, not dust, but fear. It was not just a speech, but America's first deep breath. After years of paralysis, Roosevelt did not wait. Within weeks, young men in tattered clothes were given shovels, a purpose in life. They came to plant trees and save the country. In that order? Yes, next came the Works Progress Administration, the WP. Millions were hired to build roads, bridges, schools, post offices. They rebuilt not only infrastructure, but pride. Those who once queued for bread now stood on scaffolds lifting steel to the sky. In the Tennessee Valley, FDR created the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. Dams rose, lights flicked on. Entire towns once in darkness began to glow. Families gathered around radios, not because they could finally afford one, but because they now had electricity to power it. Slowly but surely life returned. GDP rose, unemployment fell. The dust settled, both literally and metaphorically. People dared to dream of the future again. But FDR did not stop at creating jobs. He wanted to fix the machine, not just oil it. So he set new rules. Books were written to regulate Wall Street, to repeat the old mistakes. FDIC was born to protect people's savings from vanishing. Once again, banks reopened. But this time, people no longer rushed to withdraw in panic. They deposited quietly, full of hope. Then came Social Security. It did not make anyone rich, and it did not need to. It said, "You have worth. We will remember you. You will not work until you collapse." It was not glamorous, but it was a historic turning point. Even the arts were given work. The Federal Art Project paid painters, photographers, and writers to capture the soul of a nation reborn. Dorothea Lange's photograph, Migrant Mother, became the face of an era. The woman's eyes did not say, "We are saved." They said, "We are still surviving." Hollywood joined in too. People lined up in theaters to watch The Wizard of Oz, where a gray world suddenly burst into color. During the crisis, Americans still dreamed, perhaps more than ever. The cities came alive again. Restaurants reopened. Radios played cheerful swing music. And if you squinted closely, the skyline seemed to rise once more. In the distance, factories began humming again. But this time, machines were not just producing consumer goods. They made helmets, soldier boots, and ammunition. The world was shifting once more. And so was America. It was waking up, not just to recover, but to move toward something bigger. The Great Depression did not end with parties or fireworks. It ended with work, with blistered hands, aching backs, with law, hope, and a touch of optimistic music. A nation that had fallen was choosing to rise again, piece by piece. But just as America lifted its head, it did not know that on the horizon appeared something else, darker, louder, of global scale. And this time all humanity would feel it together.